Was it?
Good morning, everybody. Welcome this morning to the Proudly South African Rebuild, Reset, and Renew dialogue. And my name is Happy Umakuma Longidi. I am the Chief Marketing Officer at Proudly South African, but I'm also your Program Director today. It gives me great pleasure to welcome all of you to the session this morning, what we view at Proudly South African as a critical session to have, given the latest events, unfortunate events that we all saw unfold right before our eyes, and I'm making reference to the civil unrest that took place 2 weeks ago in South Africa. A warm welcome to all of our guests, speakers who are here this morning. I'd like to welcome Dr. Mike Nguna, who is the founder and executive chairman from Masingita Property Investment Holdings. A warm welcome to Mr. Eustace Mashimbye, who is the CEO at Proudly South African. And welcome to Homotso Motshekwa, founding director, Kona Dladla Pizzeria, and Kona Dladla Pizzeria is actually a member of the Proudly South African campaign. A warm welcome to Muzi Dladla, who is executive of stakeholder management from Sasria. Last but not least, a friend of the campaign, Philip Rotseth, who is executive director from the Manufacturing Circle. Welcome to all the attendees online this morning on the official Zoom platform hosted by Proudly South African. And welcome, we're live streaming on Facebook as well. And a warm welcome to all of those that have joined us this morning through the Facebook platform. So just to kick off with our program this morning, this decision to have the dialogue that we are having this morning was prompted by, like I said, when I opened the unfortunate events that we saw 2 weeks ago in the country, particularly in the KZN province, as well as Gauteng, where we saw the looting of businesses, shopping malls, and banning of some of these businesses. And it brings us to this discussion today. It's really, the focus is not really going to be on, with a tone to reprimand or to dwell on what happened last week is really to say, to have an appreciation of the damage that it has caused. And in our context as proudly South African, it's more about many, many, many people who have now lost their jobs, which then has a direct impact on livelihoods. And also, our intention is to try and see, how do we move on from this? How do we rebuild? How do we renew all of this? And how do we reset in the best interest of the economy of the country? That opening video that you saw is our current campaign that is out, in the public domain, including television, SABC platforms, where we collaborated with them, and we said we need to send out an emotive message to South Africa as a whole, to, in an effort to say to South Africans, we are here now. How do we move forward? Let's hold our hands like we've done before, during times of trouble. We have stood in solidarity before as a people of South Africa. We can surely do it again. And that was what the opening video was about, which is on television as we speak, and on all social platforms. And it's a collaboration between us and the national broadcaster, which is the SABC. There is a chat line for our attendees on the platform today. There's a chat line that is available for your, you can use it with the greatest of pleasure. You can send us comments, questions, and be part of the discussion. That is the whole point of today's session. And without further ado, it gives me great pleasure to then welcome the CEO of Proudly South African, Mr. Eustace Mashimge, whose job today and responsibility is really to set a tone in terms of why it is so critical to have this discussion, around what has transpired and what is the way forward likely to be, and to really just touch on our mandate, which will then give you a big appreciation of why we had to convene and have this session this morning. Mr. Mashimbe, are you online? Yes, you are online, I know that. Please switch on your camera and welcome the platform. The online platform is yours. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much, Happy. Good morning to all our delegates, to all our speakers, our distinguished guests who are going to grace us with not just their presence, but are going to share their insights with us. We are a buy local campaign, and so in the course of doing our work, we partner with a lot of people, and we draw insights from a lot of those who are experts out there. And even during this time, we found it important for us to not just have a conversation between Proudly South African and those of you who are interested in the conversation, but to bring in those who are going to help. So a special welcome to all our distinguished guests who are going to follow after I've given you a sense of why we've had this conversation. What we are is a buy local campaign, but we are built on the back of the fact that the country battles three main challenges, which are inequality, unemployment, and poverty. In fact, when you look at the unemployment numbers that came out at the beginning of April, which reflected the status quo at the end of Q1 of 2021, we saw that the country has unemployment standing at 32.6%, with an estimated 7.2 million of our people out of jobs, actively looking for employment but can't find employment. And over and above that, you have those who are discouraged. Another 3.1 million people are discouraged. And in fact, there's an additional 1 million who are not giving reasons as to why they're not seeking employment at all. So you're looking at an estimated 11.4 million people if you take into consideration the expanded definition of unemployment. 11.4 million people who could be in employment, who are eligible for work, out of a population of 59 million people are unemployed. And so the situation is quite dire. And even before we got to this COVID-19 stage, we were battling already high levels of unemployment as a country. Some examples that I thought I must share with you this morning to give you a sense of why we are in this unemployment predicament is, so I've chosen two industries. The first one is furniture. In the furniture industry, we used to have about 3,500 factories back in 1999 that used to manufacture furniture for us as an economy. And that dropped over a 20-year period or thereabout to 1,100 factories. So all those factories are gone. We've lost them. And in terms of number of jobs created, we had created about 50,000 direct jobs in those industries, in the furniture industry. And that dropped to about 20,000 jobs. So about 30,000 jobs were lost just within a 20-year period in the furniture industry. And those are direct jobs, jobs in the factories and in the establishments that make the actual furniture. But those factories and those establishments require raw materials and components, and there are jobs in that regard. And so if you look at industries like the plastics industry, we get synthetic fibers that are converted into textiles that come from that industry. We get natural fibers, hides, and skins that come from the agricultural industry that are utilized and converted into leather material that is utilized by the furniture manufacturers. The same as the metals industry, which contributes metal parts. The chemical sector is the one that we are able to get paints and adhesives from. So there are jobs across all these industries that are part of these value chains. So you're not just losing jobs in the actual furniture manufacturing business itself, but across all businesses that are part of the value chain that contributes jobs and raw materials in the process. So, and the next time you buy an imported product, think of the jobs that you're creating in those countries. If you buy a product that comes from China, if we use China as an example, you're creating jobs in China. And so it's important to think of all those jobs, not just in the furniture manufacturing industry, but across the value chain. Another industry is the clothing, textile, footwear, and leather industry, which used to have about 1,600 factories creating jobs. For us, that dropped to about 900 factories, so about 700 plants and manufacturing facilities were lost during that period. And what you see on the right-hand side is the reason for that decline. About 480% increase in imports, products that come from outside of South Africa, but 730% increase in imports from China. So we buy the clothing, textile, footwear, and leather products from China, but in the process, we're helping China create jobs. And that's why they sit with an unemployment level of 3.6, unemployment rate of 3.6%, whereas we are sitting at an unprecedented 43% in terms of the expanded definition of unemployment. So in terms of direct jobs in the clothing and textile industry, 200,000 people used to be employed in this industry. Now there's only about 90,000 jobs directly in that industry. So a lot of jobs have been lost in the process. So it is important to rebuild, not just as a result of what has happened over the past couple of weeks, but generally speaking, in order for the economy to grow, we have to rebuild. And so one of the things that we have been doing over the past couple of weeks is to start communicating and educating the masses out there about the importance of us protecting that which we have. And the opinion piece that we issued on July the 22nd was that none of us will be spared. None of us will be left unaffected by the recent events, especially in terms of jobs. Because if you think of the context of our country, the black tax phenomenon, that one salary takes care of up to 6 to 7 people in some households where one person gets an income and they have a responsibility to take care of 6 or 7 other people. So if that job is lost, you can imagine the impact. In fact, one of our speakers today is Dr. Mike Nkuna, who will tell us about the impact of what has happened on some of the properties that is invested in, the tenants that have been affected, how many jobs, and take that and multiply it and include that multiply effect to that, and it will give you a sense of how many people have been affected by this. Think of the restaurant and hospitality industry in South Africa. I mean, this is an industry that has about 15,000 sit-down restaurants before we got to COVID. So you can imagine how many jobs are in that industry. I mean, the contribution of that industry to the GDP is about 6 billion rands to the South African economy. And so if you think of the destruction of some of those restaurants who were already suffering as a result of COVID, we have just made it worse for ourselves. Those people who were waiting for the lockdown restrictions to be improved from level 4 to level 3, where we are, where people start going back, despite the fact that people are still a bit nervous about going back, but those who are willing to go back and support the restaurant and hospitality industry are now going back to a situation that we have just made worse, because now we have more people who have lost jobs. Another example is where we have seen the destruction and the burning of farms, sugarcane farms, that are a source for sugar. And that's why I thought, let me demonstrate the sugar value chain. If you burn a farm, you're affecting small-scale farmers, new market entrants who were now finding ways to benefit from having, access to land that they were able to develop into sugarcane farming operations. And think of all those people that they employ. And the master plan that focuses on the sugar industry is aimed at ensuring that as a country we consume an additional 300,000 tons of sugar. Because all of these people who are part of this value chain are going to benefit. So it's not just the farms that are now affected. If the master plan works and we consume higher levels of sugar, the farmers benefit. The millers who utilize, who further process the sugar cane into raw materials that can be utilized by the sugar manufacturers, the downstream guys also benefit. I mean, sugar manufacturers like Hewlett's access the sugar from the millers. They then pass it on to those who utilize it either in the restaurants, in the confectionaries. Some go into beverages, into that which we consume, and those downstream users are also affected. So there are jobs, according, if you look at the value chain, there are jobs across all these value chains. And that is what we seek to demonstrate through this slide, that every time you take a decision to go and impact, to go and do anything that is going to negatively impact a sugar farm, you are basically taking away job opportunities across all those industries. And we have reached out to CEOs, and I thought we must share this just to give you a sense of the kind of patriotism that we are seeing out there. We've reached out to CEOs of more CEOs, but we're only demonstrating here, giving examples of the 4 that we thought would be quick to demonstrate. The CEO of SAB, we know their warehouses were destroyed. CEO of Massmart, because a lot of their macro facilities and some of their plants and warehouses were destroyed. TFG has had some of their stores looted, and they've had to close some of the stores that are part of the TFG group. The sugarcane growers represent the farmers whose sugarcane farms were destroyed. And we reached out to them and we said, how can we help? Interestingly, none of them were asking us to help them in any way. They were all saying to us, they acknowledge receipt of our communication, because these are all strategic partners and members of Policy of Ken. But what we seek to demonstrate is the fact that they are all positively saying they're going to help us rebuild. The theme of the event today is we're going to renew, to reset, and to rebuild following the civil unrest that we saw in the country. And so all of them, the letter from the sugarcane growers says they're going to continue doing what they've been doing. Massmart has said to us they're going to continue opening their stores. In fact, the next letter from Massmart is one that the CEO of Massmart, Mitch, has sent to his staff, and they've been telling me that he does this every 2-3 days. He writes to his staff just to prep them up, to remind them that there's a bigger goal and that there are jobs on the line, that there are households who depend on them, and not just households of those who are employed by Massmart, but those who are part of the value chain, the manufacturers who depend on them to sell their products to us as consumers. The CEO of DeFi spoke about how they're going to go back and rebuild and reset, but in the process, there is a need for a campaign, and the program director spoke about the fact that there is a campaign that we have partnered with SABC on, just to make sure that we start talking to the men on the ground, the citizens on the ground, for them to understand the importance of preserving that which we have, and to start talking about how do we rebuild collectively. And so as part of that rebuild campaign, we have issued e-cards and developed e-cards where we are basically saying to South Africans, let us walk this journey hand in hand. Let us rebuild. So the messages are all positive. Let's rebuild the economy together. We're asking, South Africans to tap back into their economic patriotism, to take back into their social patriotism as part of the social cohesion drive that we all know of very well. There's a need for us to remember who we are as a people, the adversities that we were able to overcome in the past, and that even through this, if we stand together, we have stood in solidarity before, so we can do it again. We can rebuild together. Our unity will protect jobs in South Africa. One of the things that is important to remember is that despite the fact that there was distraction, and we saw South Africans come together to start repairing, and now the process of rebuilding has started, there is a need for those who are going to actively reinvest as part of this rebuilding exercise, to have us as consumers support them. Consumer purchases are important, and some of the access to market opportunities that we sit with proudly South African make it easy for those who consume, whether they consume in the public sector and the private sector or as ordinary consumers, to find those locally made products, and whether it's through our online store, whether it's through taking some of our members to trade shows so that they can showcase their products, whether it's through the central supply database integration with our database that helps those who want to do business with government to access those procurement opportunities in the public sector, whether it's through a tender monitoring system that helps us to find opportunities, tender opportunities for our members, and we pass it on to them for them to be able to bid, whether it's through the market access portal that helps the private sector buy from proud DSA member companies every time they want to buy products that we know are available and are made in the country. And even through our own Buy Local Expo, where we showcase locally made products. At some point, those who rebuild will need a consumer to walk through that store. You can go and reset and rebuild and renew and renew your store and stock it up. But if no one walks through the doors to choose that product that you're making it difficult for them to stay in business. The retailers can choose to support local manufacturers, but if we walk into those retail stores and we choose products that come from outside, we are going to support economies of those countries, and the struggles that we have as a country will continue. And this buy local phenomenon is global. It's not unique to us. What we are appealing for as part of this rebuilding process is not unique to South Africa. It's tried and tested all over the world. There are buy local campaigns that exist for countries, for regions, and even for small towns all over the world, especially in developed economies. And the example that I've given today is a case study to show that the buy local phenomenon does work is the United States, where they even have an act. They have legislation. And this legislation that you have now is not new. It dates back to the first one issued in 1933, where they issued a Buy American Act. And basically what they were saying to Americans, especially within the federal government space, is that as you buy anything that are able to make themselves as Americans, buy the one that is locally made. Don't support the one that comes from outside of the US, because you're effectively supporting an economy that is outside of the US. And so we are keen to also have the same kind of spirit carry through our purchasing decisions within South Africa, because it will help us retain jobs, create jobs. It will help those who are unemployed, who don't have any skills, even those who are graduates. They have the theory part of it, but they don't have the experience. And so in creating jobs through localization, through local procurement, as those companies get support from us, as they continue to manufacture those products that we are now demanding as South Africans, there will then be a need for them to produce more, and they will then be in a position to can employ more people. And those people will then acquire skills that they would not have sitting at home. It helps us develop the economy. It helps us advance our empowerment and transformation objectives, because even new entrants, smaller businesses who have battled with access to market opportunities, they will then be supported because their products will be locally made and they'll be of high quality. And so the living standards of our people will improve, and it will contribute to an increase in the GDP. And that's basically who we are as Proudly South African. We're a campaign that seeks to ensure that anyone who buys, anyone who makes a purchasing decision at any point chooses a locally made product. And so we focus on buying that happens in the public sector, and we work with government to ensure that the legislation that they've put in place to ensure that says if they buy in some of those designated products, they're going to buy from local producers, and that they live up to that promise. We also seek to ensure that the private sector buys locally made products. We want the general public, me and you who are on this call, when we finish this call, as we go and we buy anything that we require, whether it's food products, whether it's beverages, whether it's clothing and textiles, furniture for our homes, that if you are making a big decision like buying a car, choose a locally made product as a business person. As you go and you rebuild, make sure that you rebuild through contributing over a long-term period to the economy of the country by buying local. If you go and you buy furniture that you require, the shelving that you require for your store, the IT equipment and hardware, and every single item that you require as part of rebuilding, we are saying buy it locally. so that you don't just create job opportunities for yourself, but you create job opportunities for potential customers, as more and more people in those industries will also benefit from your purchasing decision. And as part of South Africa, we also focus on ensuring that those who want to buy local can easily find the product. So we promote accessibility of locally made products. So if you think of a classical retail value chain, a manufacturer produces a product so that a consumer can ultimately reach it, get access to it and utilize it for whatever need they have. But for that product to reach a consumer, there is usually a need for a retailer to be the middleman between the manufacturer and the consumer. And the role of PaliSouthCan is to ensure that the retailer constantly gives shelf space to a South African-made product, and that the consumer, when they walk into the place of retail, when they go into that online store, they choose the locally made product, because then the retailer will continuously give shelf space to that product. If we don't give support to the locally made products, if we don't choose them every time we walk into those stores where they are placed with competing imported products, we're basically making it difficult for the retailer to keep stocking up that locally made product because consumers are not choosing it. So choose the locally made product every time you buy, so that the retailer continuously goes to the South African manufacturer and orders from them, so that those jobs that are created by the manufacturer, as well as the jobs that are created in the value chain of those who supply the inputs and raw materials and components that are utilized by the manufacturer, all those jobs are retained. And that is the role of PaliSouthCan, is to stimulate demand for locally made products. Companies that want to affiliate with us so that consumers can easily identify products that are locally made have to ensure that they tick all these 4 boxes. The first one is that the product must be locally made. Use raw materials that are sourced locally. Only in instances where the raw materials that you require are not available in the country do we allow you to import them. But use raw materials that are sourced locally in producing your product and rendering the service that you render. So that's the local content box that you have to tick. Secondly, the quality must be right. And in rendering the service that you're rendering and in producing the product that you're producing, ensure that you help us preserve the environment and you treat your workers fairly according to the labor legislation of the country. Those who utilize the logo are members of PaliSouthCan, and they affiliate with us by paying a fee. It is not expensive. If you're a manufacturer and you tick the 4 boxes that I showed you before, ensure that you go into our website, proudlysa.co.za. There is a membership tab. There is a form that you can complete to take up membership. The fee is not expensive. As an SMME with turnover up to 5 million rands, you only pay 500 rands per annum. And so the perception out there that is expensive is not necessarily true. And so in the course of doing our work, we undertake a lot of consumer education programs. We educate those who make purchasing decisions on the importance of buying local. So one of the things that we're going to do as we embark on this rebuilding journey together with our members, I showed you some of the letters from those members who've committed to continue working this journey with us of rebuilding the South African economy. There is a need to put out a campaign that will talk to South Africans, appeal to them, to help ensure that as we rebuild over the long term, that we don't just correct what has happened now in KZN and Gauteng, but we repair what was happening even before the COVID-19 pandemic started, by ensuring that we create much needed jobs, we sustain the jobs that we already have. And we have set up a campaign called It's Game Time. And I just want to play the ad for you as I conclude, because I am out of time, and give you a sense of the messaging that we're putting out there, the appeal that we're making to South Africans as we embark on this rebuilding journey together.
The second half is about to begin. We need to change the scoreboard. It's time for all of us to pause and rethink the game plan in order to save the future. I call on all of us to be game changers, because greatness isn't reserved only for some people. By buying local, we're choosing to create jobs and sustain the ones we have. Time and time again, South Africans have taken destiny into their own hands, creating products that the rest of the world wanted to buy. See, the world remembers about us what we sometimes forget. But it's time for change. Let's all buy local. It's game time. Zanzi.
Local is lekker.
Your everyday decisions shape our future.
Your everyday decisions shape our future. Let's choose to preserve what we have. Let's choose to rebuild utilizing locally made raw materials, components, furniture, and consumables that are going to benefit the economy of our country going forward. The second half is indeed in your hands as we embark on this second half journey of ours, as we rebuild, as we reset, as we renew. We ask that you all choose locally made products, so that you choose to support the country's economy, the jobs that we also so need. If you're a business person out there, you want people to walk into your place of business and support you and buy from you. So do the same. Where will your customer come from? If you have a consumer-facing product, your consumers, your customers need to have jobs in order for them to support you. And so we're appealing to you, support other industries so that those people can in turn support your business. Thank you very much, Program Director. For anyone who wants to take up membership of Proudly South African, proudlysa.co.za, send us an email, info@proudlysa.co.za, and our numbers are also on the screen. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Eustace Mashimbe. Before you get off the platform, there is a quick question from an attendee, a delegate online, Gwen. The name is Gwen, I think, and they want to know if we also consider members who are in the services space, as opposed to just products. And I thought, I'd ask you to respond to that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So I think throughout the presentation, I keep talking about products because it's the easiest thing to utilize so that those who are listening can easily understand. So we do consider services. It's about products and services. In fact, one of the things that I said when I spoke about local content is in the services space, we want to, as part of our vetting process, ascertain whether you are utilizing locally made equipment and material in rendering that service that you're rendering. So we do consider services, but you also have to show that you're contributing to the economy by utilizing equipment, etc. Whatever you need for providing that service has to be sourced locally. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eustace, much appreciated. We may have to, I see there's comments coming in, as we go along. I may have to, I will invite you back on screen to take some of them. But, in terms of what you said, what else can we say, really, without rehashing all of the facts and the background that you gave? I think it is quite clear that there is no question, many South Africans condemn what happened, we saw South Africans come out the last weekend or so to clean up the mess and really just try to make a bit of a difference that they can make as individuals. And there's no question that that whole unfortunate event has taken the country many steps back from an economy point of view. So we have to, like you said in your presentation, Eustace, that we have to protect that which we still have. I had a bit of a chat yesterday with someone who last night who is based in Soweto in an area called Mdeni, who's a family member, who was saying that it has been so difficult in the last 2 weeks to even go to just a shop around the corner to go and get absolute essentials like bread. They have no shops anymore. They do not have an ATM. So now they're forced to, with the little bit of money that they have, they now are forced to get onto a taxi and go all the way to town to try, or all the way outside of their, area where they had access to all of those things before. Now they have to spend more money to take a taxi to go to another area or to go to town to go get their essentials. This is how important, or how unfortunate rather, this looting and burning of businesses has cost. So as South Africa, we cannot afford to see this happen again, in the near future or any other time, though we do take into consideration that there's real issues that as a people, as a country, we can't afford to just sweep under the carpet. However, there's ways and means to tackle some of these issues. Thank you so much, Eustace. Greatly appreciated. I just want to acknowledge some of the comments that are on Facebook. There's a comment from Diana who says big ups to the comments that you made, Eustace, regarding supporting local manufacturers and products. And then we do have another comment from a board member who's online, who's listening to the conversation, Mr. Ashley Benjamin. Great to see that you're here, Ashley. And Ashley says industrialization is the way to go to create jobs in South Africa. Couldn't agree with you more. By all means, we know that. And thank you so much for that comment, those comments rather, on Facebook. I do recognize your comment, Likona and Duane. We'll be back with the comments after we have a discussion with Dr. Nguna, who is our next guest on this today for this session. Gives me great pleasure to welcome Dr. Mike Nguna, who is a founder and executive chairman for Masingita Property Investment Holdings, an entrepreneur, a renowned entrepreneur whose work speaks for itself, and we are most grateful for your time this morning, Dr. Nguna, for and for you to come and join us and have this discussion with us. May I please request that you? Oh yes, I see your cameras on. We just can't see you on screen, but we do see your name. Oh yes, I can see you. We can see you. All right, thank you so much, Dr. Nguna. Welcome.
Thanks very much, Happy, Mr. Mashinzi, the CEO of Proudly South Africa, and fellow, panelists today, and all the viewers where they may be seated today and listening and get, some education as to how we can move forward as a nation.
Thank you so much. And I think it goes without saying that, the past 2 weeks following the civil unrest that we've all seen have kept you very busy. We can't even begin to imagine. But, it is quite clear that it has kept you so busy. And hence I say we really appreciate the time that you've given to us today. So you do own, your quite a number of shopping centers around the country, is our understanding, and
Yes.
2 of those is Jabulani Mall and Protea Mall, and they're both in Soweto. And we do know now that those 2 in particular were looted and businesses were destroyed in those centers. And we have seen 1 or 2 comments from your office or from you that says many thousands of jobs, actually thousands of jobs have been lost as a direct result of what happened in your shopping centers, let alone the value chain, let alone the households that have now been affected, because, when you talk about thousands of people that have lost their jobs, many of those people are breadwinners from where they come from. They take care of many family members. What is your, with that said, what is your initial comment?
Well, thanks very much, Happy. Indeed, you're quite right that, for the past 2 weeks, I've been a very busy soul in this country. And it's not something that, has been so easy. It has been something that, was very difficult. And to some extent, some of the things when they happened, I had to go outside the country and refresh so that I can gain some stamina. And I did so. And when I came back, I was moving with all the media and the interviews in order to, relate, the information out there. And what I can say, even today, I was not supposed to be here, but see, I respected your invitation and say, let me come for 30 minutes. I'm supposed to be in Jabulani and, Protea, we have embarked on a journey of rebuilding. And yes, it has happened. I would want not to talk about how it has happened, because you see, I'm a positive man. I believe in positiveness and find the solution as to how we move forward. So what has happened? Indeed, it has happened, and when it happened, it reminded me what happened in 1976, because I was there, and I was already in business when I saw that destruction. And that destruction, when I was comparing that destruction and now, and I was able to learn that 1976 was well organized because of the leaders that were on the forefront. Because what happened is that what we were fighting for, it was apartheid, and blacks, we didn't have any guns to fight the machine that was orchestrated by the apartheid government. So the only thing to fight the apartheid government, we had to come with a destruction methodology. But that destruction methodology was going to target the government institution. And those institutions was the beer hall, it was the municipalities, because you see, remember, black people were not allowed to own houses. Black people would rent houses, and they'll come and utilize the municipal offices to collect rental. So they then said, the destruction will focus on them, but will then protect things that are going to help the black people. Things such as libraries, things such as schools, black businesses that were there, they were protected. And throughout the 1976, there were no black business that was, distracted. There was no school. And it happened like that because, you see, we had, leaders that were on the forefront. And when you look at this destruction, it was leaderless. It was leaderless on the sense that, the leaders who are supposed to lead the society or the community, they are not in the township where things are happening. Once they get their positions, they move into the suburbs, but they still call themselves the leaders of the community. Some other people, as they were interviewing me, they asked me, how did you realize, that, there was something? I said, I'm a spiritual man. Being a ZCC member, you understand that what spiritual means. And when I slept, I could feel that something is not right. And because I live within those, areas where the people are, I was able to wake up 3 o'clock and drive. And 5:30 when it started happening, I was there. And what made me to be there is that, I still reside where the people are. In Limpopo, I still reside in a village called Nguzan. I live with the elderly people. I know how the black people live. Sometimes when they don't have meal, they come to my house and borrow, and we give them. So when you have leaders that have decided to abandon the people, it becomes a problem. And the other thing that, because I was doing some comparison, the other thing that, I've observed, during apartheid, there were, things that, was well structured, and there were things that, were there to help people. There were things like, a township parliament. Though, the apartheid government, they didn't want to include them in their parliament. But those township parliaments, which were focusing on a days-to-days, happening in the township, they were helping. So now those things, they have been disbanded. So those are the lessons that, we can learn. And in terms of, shopping malls that were vandalized, indeed, if you look at, the number of employment that, created there, it was a huge employment, because you see, you cannot count the people that were employed by us as developers only. You have to count the people that were employed by us and the people that were employed by the retailers on a permanent basis. And you then check the employment that were created during construction and the employment after construction. So we counted between 8,000 to 14,000. So can you imagine if you take that kind of number, translate it to the other people that they support? Even if you can say per household, you're looking at about 5. So it's quite a sizable number. And it takes us backwards where we don't want to belong. And the other thing that I want to share with my fellow panelists and viewers, because of the entrepreneurial skill that we have and the vision, I talked about 1976. It gave someone to study our economical development of the country. And it gave me an insight that our country was segmented into 3 spheres, which was urban area, township, and rural area. So the 2, we used to call it what do you call it, a periphery area, whereby you'll get a township and rural areas. So that reason it happened because the apartheid government wanted to constitute the Group Areas Act, and at the same time channel all the developments to the urban area. And the very same pattern will then flow to the parliament in their government to say how many percent do we give to blacks and how many percent do we give to ourselves. So at that time, that government was able to give themselves 80% of the budget from parliament. And then 20% will then flow to the township and the rural area and the homelands. So what has happened now, we've got our own government as Black people that emanated from 1994. And if you look at the willingness of the government in terms of how they budget, you can go to a government now, you check and see that the 80% budget which still flows to the urban area still stays. So we have failed ourselves, because you see, we're supposed to have reversed the whole thing. And the very same example that I'm giving you, it has happened in other countries outside South Africa. I normally quote China. And if you look at China, they were in a very same situation as South Africa, whereby they had Beijing and Shanghai as the main city. And can you imagine, with the highest population that they had, that if they've allowed everyone to move from where they reside to go to these 2 cities, it was going to be chaos. So the government of the day, they've said, what needs to happen is that we need to change that mindset and reprioritize and take the budget of 80% to the rural areas and create bulk infrastructure, which will then assist in creating jobs. Because bulk infrastructure, it comes with some element of hard labor. Because you see, if you look in South Africa, the educated community is about 20%, and 80% of the whole country it's uneducated. So we're talking about 80% of hard labor. Where do you create jobs for them? You cannot create them jobs in the urban area. So you have to start the new cities. That you can say, we as Black nation, we have started our new cities. But you see, what we're doing, and I'm not saying that we mustn't change things. I must be mindful, because I can be in trouble with politicians. I'm not a politician. politician, I'm a true businessman. So we go out there and change names and spend the money that we don't have by changing names. And that money we could spend it on bike infrastructure so that we can create the mixed-use development in the rural areas and give some tax incentive so that businesses can go and start investing in those areas because they'll say we've got some tax benefit. And people will go and open factories there and open other things. The manufacturing, I was listening to our CEO talking about the manufacturing and the retail. So all those kind of things will come in and assist. But you see, those are the things that will not follow. And the other thing that I've discovered is that ever since we got our democracy, we decided to move from our communities so that once we have moved from our communities, there was no one who's educating people that as Black nation, we can be able to move one step upwards or 10 steps upwards and become a Black business, big business people. So the people that are residing in those townships, they still believe that a Black person cannot own a big business. They believe that a Black person who owns a big business is a fraud, and it cannot be correct. We do have Black business that have gone out there and get franchise of various things. I can give one Black person that I respect, Bonnie. He's running a pick and pay in one of my malls in Protea Glen. He's got about 6 pick and pays. I can tell you that guy where he operates. Take Protea for instance. You've got a ShopRite, you've got Pick and Pay, and Bonnie, in terms of trade and the turnover that he does, he beats ShopRite 100 times. And it's a manner how you conduct yourself. So our people, they are there, they don't know what's happening. They see Blacks that are fronting, and we as Black people, we start undermining ourselves. Because you see, we are saying that if a Black person is doing this, it means this guy is selling drugs, or this man is a fraud, this man is so and so. So that kind of mindset is not a good mindset.
Yeah.
It reminded me of something when I wanted to build, Jabulani. You'll recall that I was the first Black person in Soweto to build an organized shopping center. Even though there were legends that they were there, the Maponyas and the Chakalalas and the Maketas, they had corner shops that were created by apartheid in Mufulo and Dube and other areas that And then I came 1981. I developed, a small shopping center. It was a well-organized shopping center of 6,000 square meters. And after developing that small shopping center, I wanted to develop in Jabulani. I then approached, because I had a vision. I then approached, OK Bazaars then, they were in Preacher Street in the inner city. And when I approached them that, I want to build, a bigger center in Soweto. They were all surprised to say, where do you get, an idea of doing this? I said, no, I've got a vision. I've done a smaller one, and I believe that I can compete you guys. So in order to push me back, they said, for you to do this, you have to get somebody to do a demographic study. And it was a way of pushing me back. But you see, I said, give me the name of that. They gave me the name of that person. I'm not going to mention his name because I'll be advertising him. And he was so expensive. And I remember I had 200,000 in my bank account then. And he wanted 150. And I said, regardless, I'd rather lose everything. I paid him. And when, he finished the demographic study and he came back to me and say, look, your idea is perfect. Your idea is progressive. The population is there, the income is there, but the mindset of the Black people is not correct. Because Black people believe that any black bean, even though it's cool and it's coming from the same pot, the black beans that
you can see from his presentation that he's got such such wealth of knowledge. In fact, in my view, I think Dr. Nguna, you need to be celebrated more. You have.
Adam, can you hear me? Adam?
Yes, now we can hear you, Dr. Nkuna.
Yes. So I was saying that, we still have a long way in educating our people. So if, we can come together as proudly South Africa,
Yes.
And work together as a team, and we'll be able to achieve more. Insofar as, redevelopment,
Dr. Nkuna, may I just try and interject before you continue, please? I just want to make 1 or 2 points and ask you a specific question before you go ahead and share with us your wealth of knowledge. When we were having connectivity problems, I was saying that it is clear how much inroads you've made, as a Black business person, as an entrepreneur, to make a difference in the lives of our communities. It is clear. And it is clear that your 1976 experience had a big impact on you to try, it was a big eye opener for you, where you said, as much as, you used the words, it was organized riots, as much as there was that structure in place, you as an individual took a decision to branch out and really try to make a difference on your own, over and above what was going on at the time. But I also want to say to you that, which will lead me to the next question, and I see there's a few people who are asking the same question, that when the 2 shopping centers in particular, went up in flames, or they were looted and destroyed, you must have stood there helplessly, to watch all of this happen, and there was nothing you could do about it. You actually said that you needed a bit of holiday, a bit of time out to go think and come back with a plan. Yes, and we do know where you went, because when we made contact with you the first time, it was on a Saturday, and we were told that you are in Morocco to watch Al Ali versus Kaizer Chiefs. I'm not going to ask you which team you supported, because they both have a big element of local. Pizza is a local export, and Kaizer Chiefs is a local club. So I'm not going to put you into trouble. We'll move right along, but we know we found you in Morocco, and you are here today. But what I want to ask, you have clearly described to us the impact that this destruction has on jobs. And there's somebody on the line who says, between the two, there's somebody from Jacaranda FM who's online now, who says between the 2 shops where you indicated that between 8,000 and 14,000 jobs were lost. And I think the question is, they want to know, how, and you did describe how you got to that figure. It's not only the people that work, in the shopping centers for you, but it's also people that are employed by the retailers. It's the value chain that you clearly took us through. Now that you come back from Morocco and you are well rested and you've thought long and hard, what are your plans to rebuild? And are the tenants coming back to your shopping centers at some point? What is the plan?
Well, let me start by distinguishing the number of employment because I've said it here when I started that
Yes.
The people that are employed is not the people that are employed by us only. We're talking about the people that are employed by us and other retailers. I'm referring to the ShopRite, I'm referring to the Games, I'm referring to the Woolworths, all those kind of shops. And if you know Jabulani,
Yes.
the whole street, from Sakis to the amphitheater, you would have passed there and see how many workers that were trading there. There were more than 500 workers. I'm referring to informal business, right?
Yes.
So those kind of people, that's how we managed to figure those numbers, right?
Okay.
And in terms of rebuilding, like I've said earlier on when I started that I was not supposed to be here, I was supposed to be in Jabulani. We said to ourselves, we need to rebuild in terms of fast tracking the food outlets. And I'm glad in your opening you indicated that people now they don't have place to buy food, and some of them after the destruction they were buying a loaf of bread for 50 rand and 60 rand. And to me that was stupidity because you have destroyed where you could have bought a loaf of bread for 11 rand. Now you're buying a loaf of bread for 50 rand or 60 rand. So you can see the education that I'm talking about. So what we have done, we said to ourselves, we're not going to be deterred because I was on the forefront of starting, the township economy. Because you see, when I've studied, how the country was segmented, I said I'm going to be on the forefront of starting, the township economy, including the rural area. And you'll see what I'm doing even in another rural areas. I'm just on the ground in Limpopo in a place called Guzana, and of which the Premier of Limpopo is going to do the soil tilling as soon as possible, so that we can see what we need. So we're not going to be deterred. We're going ahead, and in Jabulani, ShopRite will be operational from tomorrow, and in Protea from next week. The 2 sections will be operational, and for the next 2 months to 3 months will be 100% operational. And we were lucky because when I went to Protea, I started in Jabulani, and in Jabulani I said they must try to be clever because our security they wanted to fight back, and I said if they fight back, the people are going to ban the mall. So let them open the gate, the people, they must just loot. And that, it helped us because I had some foresight. And when I drove to Protea, the people were also fighting. And by then, those guys, they bombed the one section of routes. And I said, no, guys, leave them. And the fire extinguisher came and extinguished that fire. So the only section that was banned is a small section of route, and of which even that section within 3 months will be fully.
And Dr. Kuna, it is so heartwarming to hear that there is already, some work that has started to try and get things back on track. But most importantly, that there is a plan to ensure that the businesses in your shopping centers are revived, so that people get to keep their jobs, because ultimately that's what it means. Once you have the shops up and running, once you have the structure back on track, you need people to work in those, in that space. And that, so as much as this has been a major blow and a big, a setback, it's really heartwarming to know that you are hard at work. And like you say, you're supposed to be in Jabulani, now, and I would imagine that you're making your way there quickly after the session. My parting shot to you, Dr. Nguna, is we would like to know, what is your vision for the township economy as we reset, as we renew, and as you rebuild your businesses in those areas? What is your vision? What are you hoping for? And what are you hoping that we as South Africans have learned from this unfortunate event?
Well, my vision is simple. I want to see, the township to be cities. I don't want to be to see the township and the rural areas to be the peripheral area. I want to see the township to be cities, and it's doable. I've given an example how Sandton City started in 1970. It was a small shopping center with housing developing around it. But you see, because the government of apartheid, they had a plan in terms of how to grow that area. So what they did, they went back and rezoned all the housing residential and changed them into business residential. So, including us, we've got the Soweto, we've got the Vosloorus and the other township where there are developments such as retail. So around it, we can go and rezone and improve the value of those housing dwelling, because once you move from residential into business, the value of those sites become higher. So our people can utilize that as an equity when they go to bank. Because you see, what has helped me as Mike Nkuna, I was able to approach the bank. I was able to articulate my business plan because I'm a visionary. Because a lot of people, they might have plan and vision, but they fail to articulate. So I would say I was blessed in that regard, because you see, currently, if I go to any bank, there's no bank that can say we don't want to work with you. However, I must compliment what I've heard from the president in terms of helping, though ourselves were insured in terms of SASRIA and insurance. All right. So the president was talking about, because SASRIA is the insurance that belongs to government, and we are the only country in the world to have SASRIA, which is owned by government. In other countries, it's owned by private sector. So the government is going to be able to fast track, the payment, right? And he also said, they are going to look into smaller businesses that were operating in those centers, and we said to government we can assist them in order to help them to identify which business were operating, and we can say, here is the list, help them. This is the takeover that they were doing, help them. So that alone, it will become, an assistant on the government side. So if government can come on board and work with us, like what happened in China, before I move, I must say this, Jack Ma had, an idea, and with his class, he was a teacher, and after putting, that plan together, and he went to government, and the government said, this is a catalytic plan. It can help in, developing the country. Jack Ma today is one of the biggest employer in the whole world. Wow. So our government can also learn from that experience. They are the Mike Nkuna of this world and other, because I know a lot of business. So this can be a solution from our government in terms of how can we take the country back and create jobs. So if you come to Mike Nkuna and say, tell us your vision. If we support you, how many jobs you can create? They go to another one, whether it's Mandla, whether it's Sakina or Happy, and then in so doing, they'll be able to create jobs. I was so disappointed. Yesterday I was listening to one of the politicians. He's in the economic cluster. I won't mention his name. And when he was asked, "What plan do you have?" He said, "No. That's why we have decided to give the 350 for 6 months. We want to write a plan." It was so embarrassing from my side.
Yeah, I can imagine. But Dr. Nkuna, our gratitude knows no boundaries. We really, really appreciate your time today. I mean, you've left us with such wealth, of information and knowledge. There's no question about your passion, in as far as entrepreneurship is concerned, in as far as making a major difference in the communities that most of us come from. There's no question, about where your passion lies in as far as that is concerned. In fact, there's a comment from Robert, who's on the line, who says Dr. Nguna should be heading up the economic social development department in South Africa. We will leave it there because now we'll step into another terrain and we'll have that discussion on another day. But I must say, I think that your story needs to be told a lot more. I really think that South Africans have not celebrated you enough because maybe, we do not have an appreciation of your story, from the 1976 era. Thank you so much for your selflessness. And I'm thanking you now because I know that you have to get off the call because you have to go to Jabulani Mall. We really, really thank you, Dr. Nguna. We will be in touch as Proudly South African, to try and see how we can help and make a difference. Thank you so much. But I will throw you under the bus before you leave. I want to know that when you came back from Morocco, did you come back a happy man?
Yes, I was a happy man.
In terms of who won?
No, I was a happy man because, you see, to me, it was a great experience. By the way, I'm a director of Kaizer Chiefs and a shareholder of Kaizer Chiefs. So you must understand that I was going to support myself.
Okay, and now that you've mentioned Kaizer Chiefs, I think then I'm at liberty to tell you that, your tweet or a statement from you, a few days after the destruction, where you were outlining the job loss element, was given to me by Dr. Kumar. And that's how we found you. Now that you mentioned Kaizer Chiefs, I thought, let me tell the truth. When he sent me that tweet or that statement you made, privately, and I said to my boss, I think we have to find Dr. Nguna. So Dr. Kumalo is the one that brought you here today, threw you under the bus.
Well, Dr. Kumalo is my boy. He behaved me to have given you my number, because I was part of his success, and I used to motivate him to be strong. And most of the players, within our club, some of them that are in business is because of me.
Oh, thank you so much. This is why I say maybe South Africa has not celebrated you enough. We'll be in touch, Dr. Nguna. Thank you so much and bless you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, so that was Dr. Mike Nguna, whose story is amazing. And I know there's a few questions and comments that we will read at the end of towards the end of the session. We are running slightly out of time, but it was absolutely critical to have a voice, Dr. Nguna's voice in this narrative and in this discussion. Particularly from a job loss perspective and job creation perspective, given the two shopping malls that has suffered has been affected by the looting and the civil unrest. And as somebody who started that revolution, it was quite important that we give him time to share with us. We're going to move along with our program. Keep those comments coming and those questions coming. The next speaker who is online, who is going to share, his story with us, take us through his experience as a business person, as an entrepreneur, and as a member of Proudly South African, is Pomutso Mutshekwa, founder and director of Konadladla Pizzeria, which is a business that is based out in Protea, a stone's throw away from the Protea Mall, and his today is really to share with us how what his view is when he saw some of the community members, around his business and around Protea standing in solidarity and trying to intervene, and as a result, his business was also saved from the destruction. And some of these key learning points and how he managed to then continue with his business and keep the people that he's employed. Komoto, welcome. Please, may I ask you to, switch your camera on and briefly talk us through your experience throughout this process.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you and see you on the
okay.
screen. Please go ahead. Thank you.
No, thank you so much for inviting me today. I'd also like to obviously greet all our viewers. Yeah, so, it's been quite a challenging period at the moment, particularly for us who operate within the hospitality sector. It goes without saying that pre the pandemic, obviously we've had an ailing economy, and then the pandemic came into play, and then now with the riots coming in, they've just compounded, the challenges for us as small business players within the hospitality sector. So in our case, we obviously are still a growing business, having recently just transitioned from operating from our home into our local shopping center. I think we've just completed a year. So understanding all of that, trying to settle into our new operating space, and then this coming into play, it's really brought about a lot of challenges for us. So in our case, as I said, sad to say that within our shopping complex, we've got an anchor tenant, which is Pick n Pay. And it's the Pick n Pay, and there's also a Pick n Pay liquor outlet. So leading to the riots, what we did is the previous evening, when we heard that Dobsonville was on fire and everything was, the riots were taking place there. In the morning, we decided to sort of take proactive action and start engaging with the security personnel within our center to find out what do they have in place in terms of protecting the center. And unfortunately, they hadn't heard anything from all the other players. But eventually, when they decided to take into effect that they were going to shut down the complex, it was then that my team and I decided to say, okay, you know what, let's just drive around within Soweto and see what's happening so that we can also take a decision going forward. Upon our return to the shopping center, we could see that most of the guys that were eager to loot were already surrounding the shopping center. And then at the time, we then decided to say, you know what, what's the first thing perhaps that would be attractive to the looters in terms of coming in to maybe steal from our shop? We then decided to take the decision to take away our TV screens, which we use to showcase our menu and all promotional sort of items. So that was the first thing that we did. And then later on, when we came back, there obviously was law enforcement officers there as well, who were trying to quell the situation and chase away the guys. But unfortunately, it happened that, this thing was starting to gain momentum, and eventually the guys brought down the fence of the shopping center and managed to break into the liquor shop, obviously with police trying to chase them away. So I guess a decision was made then from the Pick and Pay guys to come through and try and, save up some of their stock. So at that point, it was then that we decided to say, you know what, because law enforcement is still here to assist us, let's also just take the decision to bring in our baki to salvage whatever we have left within our shop. So we took all our property, our fridge, some of the equipment that we use to produce our products and stuff, and then managed to take the stuff out. And then unfortunately, that wasn't enough, because what then happened is later on, the guys decided then to break into the Pick and Pay and loot and, take out everything from there. The next day when we came in, it was completely destroyed, the liquor shop and the Pick and Pay. Now, mind you, like I said, Pick and Pay is one of the anchor tenants there, and they bring in a lot of foot traffic into the shopping center, which in some way then helps us as smaller tenants to gain from that particular foot traffic. So later on that same day, the next day, we as the smaller tenants within the shopping center, we decided to come together, and through one of our other tenants, Tulani from Kofifi, kudos to him as well. He came through and suggested that, look, guys, last night, these guys tried to break into also your shop, Homotso, and we had to call them to say, guys, listen, these are small businesses, black owned. These guys are still trying to build up. So please don't loot this particular outlets and whatever. So in the day, we then decided that as small tenants, we just group together and assist with security in the evening, just so that we can protect whatever assets we still have left, because rebuilding from then onwards is obviously going to be tough for us. And then in the day, sad to say that we managed to also assist, because somebody tried to come in and burn the Pick and Pay further. So when the flames had already started, because we were still in the center, we had to run in with our fire extinguishers and stuff and, quell this particular fire, which fortunately didn't really take effect that much, because had the flames really taken off, it would have destroyed all the property there, because I think they probably were gas cylinders there and stuff. So it is quite unfortunate, as I said, that, it's sad to realize that as a community, young people are just sitting, idling. And obviously when such things come up, criminal activity easily takes effect. And I think government needs to really come into play here to work alongside us as small businesses and community leaders, I guess, to come up with ideas, that can take us forward, because it's easy for such things to take effect when people are just sitting idling. I mean, just this morning, I had a video that was sent to me by one of the security personnel. I'm not sure where it is, where it was just showing a young lady, quite young, coming in to effectively start the fire in one of those shopping centers, which is saddening, because you ask yourself, where are the adults in all of this? Where's, if this child is sitting there and was convinced to go and start the fire there, it's disrupting the entire, value chain now of that particular community. Again, even with us, I was listening to Dr. Nguna earlier on, speaking about how the hawkers that would essentially be operating outside of the shopping center have also been affected. We're already seeing it on our side as well, because we had taken a conscious decision to say that some of our suppliers, we're gonna go to and support our local hawkers as well. There's a lady who every week, without fail, we go to get some of our perishable stuff, your peppers, mushrooms, etc., and keep her in business as well. But as a result of being non-operational the whole of last week, you know, as I say, the supply chain in this regard has been really disrupted. So we do really have a long way to go, I guess. And it's important for everybody to galvanize now and, come together, to help salvage this particular situation. Because as I said, in our industry, everybody's been affected. With the pandemic as well, for us, again, as proudly SA members, we used to enjoy the access point that the Delicious Festival used to help us. Those sort of events enabled us as a small business to generate revenue over the 2-day period, which we could take back and recapitalize into growing our businesses. So now with such events gone and other festivals, experiential markets out there, it's completely destroyed our industry. And I guess at the end of the day, when you look at how our industry is the biggest platform for job creation, we do really need a lot of assistance going forward. I think the government needs to try and come through to our aid at this point.
Khomotso, thank you so much for taking us through your journey in the last 2 weeks or so as all of this unfolded. And you are right. It's just you used the word unfortunate. It really was unfortunate, and I think it just cripples you, where you need the strength to stand and carry on. But it's also great to see that there was a clear demonstration of what happens when you stand in solidarity. When some of the smaller tenants, came together with you, and you decided that you're going to protect your businesses and all the other businesses, like the anchor tenant, Pick n Pay that almost was bent down, but you managed to stop that. It just shows that even in the midst of trouble, there are South Africans. It's in our nature, in most cases, to stand together, to stand in solidarity and say no. And it was clearly the case, that you've just unpacked for us. And we're grateful that your damage, the damage in your business is not as massive as it could have been. Yes, it's a setback. We can't underplay that. It is a setback. And then you touched on the reality of COVID and the fact that all those access to market opportunities that we used to make available to you as proudly South African, like Delicious, are not happening anymore. But I can tell you this much: COVID will not last forever. It can't take us a lifetime. So we will be out there again. Those access to market opportunities for you and many other entrepreneurs and small businesses will come back again. We, as proudly South African, we will not stop at working hard at making sure that happens. All those shopping centers will open again. People will go back to work again. It was just a little bit of a pause, an unfortunate pause that none of us were ready for. But we will move again. Thank you so much, Khomotso. It's really, really appreciated. But we also touched on a very important, highlighted a very important reality, social ills. That young lady that you said started the fire in Pick n Pay, obviously just idling, and there was whether influence to do it, whatever the case may be. That is a part of social ills that we are dealing with, given the unemployment rate, inequality, and poverty that the country faces still. Thank you, Khomotso. I hope you stay online if you can for some comments and closing comments later, and just check also if there's any questions that were directed to you. Thank you so much. So as we continue with the program, we will now, it is a bit of a break, so to speak. I'm going to ask the technical team or the team in the technical office to please go ahead and share with you on screen in the next 40 seconds or so, a montage that we've put together as Proudly South African. It's really a combination of some of our member companies, big member companies of ours, who have demonstrated that even after their own businesses were destroyed, they still got up and made a clear decision, and were very decisive and intentional that those businesses were going to still continue after, the looting and the burning of businesses. They were still going to continue, and they came together to clean up. But over and above that, which is what the CEO alluded to earlier on, when he was talking about those, some of the member companies that we wrote to, who then in turn did not even ask for help from Proudly South African, but they said, we are helping communities around our businesses. We are helping other businesses to rebuild and to restore. And this montage seeks to demonstrate how people have come together, many of the businesses that we work with, and some of those businesses are not even Proudly South African members, but we felt a responsibility to show you that, the rebuilding process and renewing process has begun by all means. Please, may I ask you to play the video, which is about 2 minutes. Thank you.
Joined now by Geraint Chris Williams, who's the chairperson of Prime Media Broadcasting. You want to try and walk the talk and reach out a bit.
But in a more tangible form, I want to donate 50,000 Rand to Alex FM to help them get back up and running again.
Thank you so much for that montage. And this is really the long and short of it. If you look at that montage, it gives us a great deal of hope. And we are hoping that as you watched it, you got a sense of hope, and, seeing South Africans and all those companies wanting to make a difference and rolling up their sleeves, literally rolling up their sleeves to make this happen. Thank you so much for that. In the interest of time, we're going to move right along. And we do have, as one of our speakers, an executive of stakeholder management from Sastria, Mr. Muzi Dladla, who is going to briefly take us through what they've been mandated to do as by government. We saw the Minister of Finance addressing media yesterday regarding the plan going forward, and indicating in that meeting that 8.9 billion has been allocated for this rebuilding process, and Sastria is managing that whole process of anticipated claims from informal and formal businesses. Thank you so much, Sir. welcome to this discussion today. Mr. Dladla, may I please request that you switch your camera on and take us through your brief presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Program Director, and greetings to everybody watching. Greetings to the panel members as well. Well, I think that the best way for me to start this is to perhaps look at giving a little bit of background on SASRIA, as well as there's a bit of awareness as well as to SASRIA. Who is SASRIA actually? Because there seems to be not clarity in respect of who we are and what we do and why do we come in now in particular. And I think I like particularly what Dr. Nkuna had mentioned when he gave a very good history on comparison between 1976 and now as to really what are the fundamental differences which when gave particular rise to SASRIA. Why SASRIA actually exists today was actually particularly due to the uprising that took place in 1976. So to maybe begin, I would say that SASRIA is an entity that is owned 100% by government. So it is correct to say that it's a state-owned entity. However, we are an entity that is licensed insurer, and at the same time, we actually mandated to pretty much cover civil unrest. So to give you just an understanding, so what happened is in 1976 when there was this, excuse me, uprising, insurance companies were actually covering these types of risks, but it became so much because it was so systemic and it was covering pretty much, it was covering the entire South Africa. There were just destruction and chaos everywhere. And then a decision when was made that because government at the time was struggling to be able to finance, like ex-post financing, as you know, it's normally slow and it takes time to get to the people who are affected. And government has only as much money in the kitty to be able to support where there's destruction. And insurance companies at the time, they also couldn't necessarily cover all the damages because it was becoming too much. The destruction was just getting too big and getting out of hand. So what then happened is SASRIA was then formed in 1979 as an entity that is mandated particularly to cover these particular special risks. So if you look at it, in as much as the entity is there, the cover that has been granted is not necessarily compulsory for everybody, it's voluntary. And again, if you look at what Dr. Nkuna mentioned, he said that the types of destruction have actually shifted now, because what happened then, it was very organized and it was more, I would say, targeting very big constructions and government entities pretty much that are owned, as well as buildings and structures like that. So SASRIA was then formed, and what happened is that then we partnered with the insurance companies, the various insurance companies that we have out there, have partnered with SASRIA to be our distribution channel. So SASRIA, what we cover, if you're looking at that question in particular, we cover special risks, but there are specific special risks that we cover. The first one is terrorism. So we cover terrorism, and that's pretty much looking at the intentional use of violence. Normally, it is normally to achieve a political aim, and sometimes not even a specific political aim. It's just to overthrow either a government or, having a particular connotation to public affairs. And then you have the big one, which is public unrest or public disorder. And I mean, it has many names, civil disorder, civil unrest, but pretty much all it is that what happens is that normally when there's a protest is supposed to be peaceful because it's just to deliver a message or to pretty much counter a particular event or particular thing that is happening at a particular time. And it is supposed to be a non-violent type of act, but then it escalates. And once it escalates, it becomes a public disorder or civil unrest, which is categorized by various things: looting, rioting, vandalism, arson, and violence in many times. So SASRIA was then formed in particular to cover those particular risks, as well as the third one would be strikes. So you'd have like employees normally who have a collective refusal of a particular condition of employment, if it's a condition of employment, but normally it is employees that are fighting with their employer about a particular thing. And what they would normally then do, it would then escalate from being a particular strike into something that really becomes unmanageable. So those destructions then, as I've mentioned, particularly in that order, are what SASRIA was formed to cover. And it just so happened, because of pretty much what Dr. Mpuna had mentioned, that it was organized and it was normally large entities that were affected. So what we saw today is really sad, because a lot of small to medium enterprises have been affected as well, quite largely, particularly the transportation industry as well. And to some extent, there are some individual properties, like you and me, individual property owners and vehicle owners who are also affected by this civil unrest. So what that then means for looking forward in terms of rebuilding, then it pretty much means then that the focus for SASRIA now, I believe, is more relevant than it ever has been in the past. Most people are not necessarily really aware of who SASRIA is. And I think we're going to be doing a lot of campaigning and a lot of working pretty much with government entities and with the private sector as well, and with associations and entities like yourselves, in order to be able to raise this awareness so that there's an understanding. Because the issue is that there are some individuals who will not necessarily buy SASRIA insurance, mainly because they don't really know. That's the first thing. And secondly, some of them will not, because they believe that they could not necessarily really be affected until something that really happened now happens. So there are a lot of uninsured markets and people out there who have, I would call them hidden risks. So risks of having the property being damaged by these specific perils that I've just mentioned, which could impact their livelihoods and really leave them destitute. Because the reality is this, is that because SASRIA is the only entity in South Africa that is mandated by legislation to cover these particular types of events, it means even if an individual or a property or a small to medium enterprise or even a large corporation does not have, or let me rather say, has an insurance policy to cover themselves against damage to the property, it doesn't necessarily automatically mean that they are covered for SASRIA. And now that creates a gap now, because some of the entities that understand and know this risk would be covered right now. And that is what SASRIA is there for. And that's why we cover these particular types of events, because the scale is quite big. The damage is quite big. I mean, as you would have seen in the news and heard in media as well, talking about in billions, that the total economic destruction is in billions. And obviously it affects government directly. But then again, because SASRIA is here, just want to clarify the role of SASRIA and its impact as well, is to ensure that each and every single entity that is insured currently in terms of SASRIA, then that SASRIA would obviously make good those losses, which are obviously subject to, which are subject to those claims being verified, obviously, and being adjusted as well. So we have loss adjusters that go out there. We try to work as fast as we can to get to determine the particular quantum, so we can be able to settle those claims and bring the business back into into operation as well. So our goal is to ensure that there is no market destruction in terms of those who have SASRIA insurance, so that we bring them back into the same position that they were before this destruction that we saw happening, pretty much systemically spreading throughout almost the country, although it was largely in KZN and in Gauteng. But I mean, you can imagine what could have happened if it really spread even further. So the destruction, it's highly systemic risk. And it is important that moving forward, we include small to medium enterprises, we include individual property owners and vehicle owners into the space of SASRIA. SASRIA, in as much as it is voluntary, I'm going to repeat this again, it is going to be critically important to ensure that we cover all those markets, because right now, working with insurance companies to distribute through them to the markets that they're insuring, it currently means then that there are certain markets that are outside of that have this particular risk or problem of having the property being damaged. The gentleman who just spoke now, I mean, he is a typical example of someone who just been caught off guard, having his business that he's worked really hard for being really damaged right in front of his eyes. And SASRIA is particularly there to ensure that when that happens, then we come in and we cover those as soon as possible. Now, the minister has obviously committed to working with us insofar as ensuring that we are able to service all of those liabilities as they come. But obviously, at the same time, the state is looking to help even businesses that were not covered by SASRIA. So that is something that DTI and the National Treasury are working together to put packages that will be able to help in respect of that. So that's pretty much the main part of it, the main essence, because in as much as each and every individual can take the risk of having to rebuild themselves, the bottom line is that you could never really have enough amount of money to build or to reserve so that you can put yourself in the same position. The economists are just not allowing it because the amount of cash you would need to keep is too high. So transferring that risk to an insurer is the way to go, because even government itself, the creation of SASRIA, when it was done at that point, was to shift the burden of having to reserve billions and billions of rands from the fiscus so that it sits there and it loses a lot of opportunity cost as well, because when money is being put aside to wait for eventualities that might happen now or later, it means then that government is unable to utilize that fund for other things that could take the country forward. So the decision then was that SASRIA is created so that instead of reserving those funds, a large portion of that burden is then transferred to SASRIA from an ex-post financing mechanism into having an integrated risk management approach by applying an ex-ante, which is before the event. And what is pleasing about SASRIA in particular is that the amount of premium that gets charged by SASRIA is a fraction of what you would pay normally. And the reason for that, a couple of reasons for that. The one reason is that because SASRIA is the only entity that can offer this type of insurance, it then means that we have to ensure that the pricing that we apply is such that it is accommodating, it is inclusive. Even someone who owns a property, who sits in a township and can insure for SASRIA, and the premium for SASRIA is so affordable that it would be unbelievable when you actually get to understand how much you pay for that, either on a monthly basis or on an annual basis. And the purpose for that is to ensure that it is an inclusive type of cover that covers everybody. So because we are the only entity that is able to do that, then we are able then to ensure that the pricing is done in that way. So a SASRIA component of premium compared to your normal insurance is literally a fraction in respect of that. So as part of building forward, then the plan for us now is to then do two things. One is to work, first of all, with the state, as well as to ensure that we work with entities like yourselves, SysHappy, as well as other entities that where we can be able to find an aggregation point where we are able to access markets that we currently do not access because of the distribution channeling that we're currently using. So we're looking to expand on that so that we are able to then look even outside of the traditional insurance way of delivery and way of accessing insurance, into saying that each and every individual out there, even those who don't have access to direct insurance, but we can put mechanisms together in an aggregated manner so that we are able to access a large number of people through a particular distribution point. Then we're going to have many of those so that we're able to access. Now, we are quite confident that we can be able to do that in a relatively short to medium term period. We'll be talking and engaging a lot of stakeholders in respect of this as part of rebuilding, so that we're able to ensure that what happens now or what is happening now, when it happens or should it happen again, that at least SASRIA can be the entity that covers majority of those losses that are happening, rather than now where we are only covering the ones that we are insuring, obviously, and that is notwithstanding the fact that there will be relief that will obviously be put together by the state insofar as helping particularly SMMEs and other businesses moving forward in that respect. So if you then ask yourself the question of what is then SASRIA's mandate or plans moving forward in ensuring that we create an inclusive type of environment where each and every one who wants Sasria can actually be able to have access to Sasria. Because our mandate in particular is to actually focus on researching and investigating specialist risks, that particularly the ones that are considered of national interest, like particularly this type of risk. It is extremely systemic, and it is called a special risk because it is extremely systemic. It is complex and very difficult to manage and control as well. And then largely, it is an event that if it takes place, it definitely has a direct impact on the economy. It has a direct impact on the fiscus at a sovereign level. So that's the one component. The second component is to then ensure that we find ways of bringing about positive contribution to transformation, particularly in the financial services space, because that's where we are. And this has to be done in line, obviously, with the NDP. And that's where we're looking, obviously, at finding ways to getting to provide this type of cover, even for individuals who are in the economies that have been mentioned, so the urban areas and the high LSM levels. I think we are pretty much, there's enough, perhaps not enough, but there's awareness of what we do and why we should be there. But then moving into the SMMEs and the lower LSMs as well, that's where we're looking to find ways of getting into. And obviously there will be additional other discussions that we're going to have with our shareholder, in particular to find some sort of a safety net, if you like, at a sovereign level that looks at even the ones who are at a more vulnerable level, so that there is a safety net that has been put, because should things like this happen, particularly these unorganized structures that we see now of protesting, because those are the ones that are extremely dangerous, because as Dr. Nkuna said, there is no face to it, first of all. And secondly, it's very opportunistic. So being opportunistic means they will vandalize and damage anything that is in their way, even if there's really little to gain out of it. So to ensure that moving forward, we are able to then make sure that those vulnerable structures or parts of the market are then covered, a safety net mechanism will have to be put in place that covers that. So if you look at it in a hierarchy of some form, is that if you look at the bottom, you would have a safety net, preferably at a sovereign level, that looks to accommodate the damages that would come from there. The idea there is to ensure that you don't put an ex-post financing structure that is too large, because as I've already mentioned, that it takes away the opportunity of utilizing those funds in other ways. So as to then try to find a before the event type of structure, so that when you put it together, it is there to transfer the risk into somebody else's balance sheet or into somebody else's funds that they are utilizing, obviously, to get a particular premium out of. So out of to use a simple number, out of 100, if 100 is what you need to reserve, you could actually reserve only 10 and use the 90 for something else, so that the 10 we use to transfer the risk to other structures of funds of cash that are sitting there that you're able to cover. So from a planning perspective, that is pretty much where we are moving towards. Excuse me, I just want to ensure that my screen just went black. There we go. Yeah, so that is pretty much what we are focusing on as Sasria moving forward. So I think in terms of that, in the spirit of rebuilding, so Sasria as an entity that is a licensed insurer and an authorized financial services provider as well. We are committed, just like all the other entities that are there, to ensure that we rebuild and we ensure that moving forward, even the suffering and uninsured markets, we find solutions for them prior the event. I think that's the key message I want to bring across, that an integrated risk management approach is always key, particularly in terms of disaster like this, that we put a structure like that together as a collective, which is probably the most important thing to do. So I'm going to pause there, Happy, and I'll be happy to take questions in that respect.
Thank you so much, Muzi. And yes, there's quite a few questions for you. I think you are the center of attraction, let me tell you that. So hopefully we'll still have you on the line for the next 15 minutes or so. But please can I have you back on screen quickly, just for one clarity. And I must say that, what you've shared with us today really gives us a sense of a better understanding for most of us in regards to what you are mandated to do as SASRIA. What I do want to, and you have also mentioned the fact that perhaps you should be going on a campaign going forward to really inform businesses, local, businesses in the country, in terms of what you do as SASRA. And you've invited Proudly South African to somewhat, do a bit of work with you in that regard. I can tell you this, you don't have to ask us twice. We are all here, we've heard you, and we will have a sidebar with you when the time is opportune. Just for clarity's purposes, there was a question around this. You are mandated to process claims from formal businesses that are insured and not informal businesses. But for those informal businesses and small businesses that are not insured, there is a fund that the government is busy sorting out, that is allocating rather, and that fund is not managed by you.
Yeah, you're quite correct. So SASRA is actually operating like any other normal insurer. That's why I emphasize the fact that we are a licensed insurer, just like any other insurer. So we will obviously be making good the losses in respect of our policyholder liability. So, and the ones that are outside of that, you are quite correct as well. So that's when the state then comes in. That's when tapping now into this ex-post financing type of mechanism. SASRA would obviously, we've put our hand up to say that we are willing to put resources to insofar as helping government and DTI, particularly, National Treasury and DTI, particularly, to be able to ensure that it is utilized in a way that will benefit, obviously, the intended beneficiaries. So it is not necessarily part of our mandate, as you rightfully said, but we are obviously, as a state-owned entity, here to help the entities that require that help, to help work with government to ensure that those funds that have been reserved by the state then can obviously get to those intended beneficiaries.
Okay, and before you go, what happens to the hawkers, Muzi, the hawkers that Dr. Nguna made reference to? Where are they in this picture? Would they fall under that fund? Yeah.
You see, I'm reluctant to really answer those questions on behalf of the National Treasury. What I can give you is from a structuring perspective and a risk management perspective as to where they would fall in. So those vendors would fall in because they're informal in a way. So they would fall within the safety net that I was talking about. Okay. And that is obviously looking forward. There has to be a safety net that covers those type of individuals who don't have structured business and formal businesses. And then the second layer is then the small to medium entities who are actually part of the whole production. And those ones, I think the fund that is there is aimed at looking at them. But we need to bridge the gap insofar as bringing them into the formal insurance cover that SASRA actually covers.
Okay, I see you are managing me. You're putting me on a very tight leash. You're not allowing me to throw you under the bus, and it's not the intention. But thank you for clarifying that, though. Thank you for clarifying that, and thank you for what you've shared with us. Like I said, we now have a broader and a better understanding of what you're doing. In all of this that we see unfold out there in the public domain. Thank you. We will do our closing remarks just now shortly. Thank you so much. And we've now almost at the end of the session. And we do have a friend of the campaign who has joined us, Philippa Rotzak, who's Executive Director of from the Manufacturing Circle. Philippa, always a pleasure to see you and chat to you at any given time. Thank you so much. And you are going to, and I must acknowledge the fact that, and apologize profusely, we have taken a bit of your time as we were unpacking this session, but feel free to share with us what it is that you had planned to share with us. And you're going to be looking broadly at the real impact of all of this what has happened in the last 2 weeks or so, the real impact from an economy perspective. Philippa, you're welcome. Please go ahead and talk to us.
Thank you, Happy, and thank you to Proudly SA for inviting me to participate. The Manufacturing Circle works very closely with yourselves, and always happy to share thoughts and to collaborate. For those of the listeners who may not be aware of the Manufacturing Circle, we are a voluntary industry association. We are the voice of manufacturing in South Africa. We really represent and talk for the manufacturing sector. We believe so strongly that manufacturing is the engine of growth for our economy. We absolutely cannot afford to become a wasteland of imports. We've got to manufacture things. We've got to make things. Manufacturing has such a high multiplier on many levels. If you make something, you've got to package it, you've got to transport it. So very high multipliers from a jobs perspective. Also, it's an opportunity to earn export revenue if exports are applicable. So it's really the engine of growth and very, very important for our economy. So as the Manufacturing Circle, we advocate for the importance of the manufacturing sector and what needs to be done to support and grow it. We broadly advocate that we need in order for manufacturing to function well, we need a competitive environment to facilitate manufacturing. We need to attain a supportive international position when it comes to international trade, particularly when it comes to unfairly incentivized imports. And we also need to promote the reputation of locally manufactured products. And that third point, promoting the reputation of manufactured product, is where the Manufacturing Circle and Proudly SA align and work so closely together, because it's really an aspect that's very true to the hearts of both of our institutions. So Happy, you've asked me to talk a little bit on the impact of the economy, and look, it's been quite significant, and I'll give one or two examples and sort of why, but then what I also want to talk to is really what it is we need to do to move forward, because I think all of us have, been impacted either directly or indirectly over the last 3 weeks. For me, as the Manufacturing Circle Executive Director, our member companies span different subsectors of manufacturing and different parts of different value chains. So we have companies that operate in machinery and metals, in packaging, in agro-processing, in pharmaceuticals. And these manufacturers are based across the country, and they have factories based across the country. So on the Monday morning, following the start of the unrest on the Saturday, my phone started ringing from the various company owners and stakeholders, particularly the ones based in KZN, to say that this is a very urgent situation. Is industry and business aware of this? We need to communicate, urgently to and escalate what is happening on the ground. One of our Manufacturing Circle members manufactures in the steel space and employs almost 1,000 people. And the CEO phoned me and said, they're part of their manufacturing process. They use gases. They've had to close the whole factory because if those gases catch alight, they are explosive and flammable. The employees can't get to work. The employees can't get food. You know, it's a very, and what do? We have absolutely no plan. We don't know what tomorrow is looking like. So those were the kind of rather distressed calls that I received. And similarly, you know, on the side of government as well, our various DTIC colleagues saying, look, we need to find out what's happening on the ground. How can we report back to the NAT joints, you know, as to where help needs to be deployed. So it was, yeah, it was kind of quite, I guess, yeah, getting a sense real time, although, you know, from a distance as to what was happening. And then the impact of that is, you know, is clear from a manufacturing perspective, because manufacturing relies on supply chains. So if you can't get, you know, fuel up to KZN or KZN, from KZN up to Gauteng or wherever else it is in the country, that's a problem for manufacturing operations. There's been a problem with the ports and still is by way of their planning and online systems, which again in turn impacts you know, getting exports out or import of products. And that's not to mention, you know, the direct impact on employees or their broader families. So clearly significant impact, and it's very you know, it's very difficult for the economy and the manufacturing sector, particularly if, you know, that's just on the back of, you know, having to deal with COVID and the other challenges that we are currently experiencing. So, you know, that's just you know, a perspective from my side on the impact of the economy from my point of view, which I'm sure is not news to anyone on this call, and probably quite a few participants have had very real and direct experiences and very stressful ones over the past couple of weeks. So, you know, what is it that we need to do going forward? And the principles of what we need to do in manufacturing to grow the sector, and in so doing the economy, still remain. Those haven't changed. What we really talk to as the manufacturing circle is that we want to achieve, we refer to a virtuous demand cycle. So if there is demand for product that's manufactured in South Africa, we've got factories, we've got local production. A lot of them at the moment are manufacturing under full production capacity because there's just not sufficient demand. The global economy is, you know, not doing particularly well, and neither is our domestic economy. So if there's less buying power, less purchasing of products, you know, there's going to be less demand. So if we can increase demand for manufactured products, and there's some very tangible ways that we can do that, which I'll talk to, that means that, you know, that the existing factories can then get up to their maximum production capacity. They can maybe then even add an extra shift, you know, or overtime, then an extra shift. And if this continues and grows, and also in manufacturing, the more you manufacture, you know, generally speaking, you get better, your economies of scale enable sort of better pricing, more competitiveness, all of those good things. So perhaps then it enables increased investment, or maybe even the establishment of a new manufacturing business. And all of these you know, interventions then would require more employees and support, and so more people are employed. That, you know, income, hopefully some of it, if it can be applied, you know, to the spending on local products. So the virtuous cycle continues, and you know, so this virtuous demand cycle is something that we always need to think of and aspire to. So that really hasn't changed. And there's a lot of work that is happening in that space, and driven by Proudly SA and also collaboratively with Manufacturing Circle in some regards, because you've got you've got two key sectors or areas that purchase product. The one is government, and then the other is the private sector. So on your government side, we have this policy called designation. Some of you are probably very familiar with it, where certain product that government buys needs to come from locally manufactured source. Industry, it's not incumbent on industry, to purchase from anywhere, but from any specific space, but to the extent that we can make commercial reasoning, and it makes sense, and also there's an understanding of the importance of buying local. That's really a lot of work that we focus on, because that's really, really important. And two examples over last year during COVID, where Manufacturing Circle and Proudly South African worked together in the COVID response, shows what we can achieve. We worked together in the local manufacturing partnership, where we assisted in ramping up the local manufacturing production of medical equipment and personal protective equipment. And that was a very successful exercise, where we are still applying a lot of focus and attention is on the procurement side, because in the private sector healthcare space, a lot of procurement is still from imported products, and similarly in government, the procurement procedures are not always followed procedurally. So if we can sort that out, then you've got more demand for that particular product. And then in addition, I chair the National Ventilator Project, where from scratch, it's housed within the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition. And from scratch, it's the same team of engineers who built the Square Kilometre Array, which is our radio telescope, developed and project managed the design and manufacture of breathing apparatus, ventilator type devices. So those are two examples of what it is that we can do. And so we've got understanding of what we need to do. We have been set back by the recent 3 weeks. It's very difficult. Manufacturing is an ecosystem, so it's very responsive to its environment. And if you've got a range of pressures by way of municipal service delivery, that's not necessarily always good on a good day, then compounded by supply chain issues and recent unrest and sort of perhaps lack of comfort in future investment, that really does make the task of manufacturers more difficult. So what I'd really say is what for me has been highlighted is this important sense of that we've got to have a sense of urgency in where are the areas that need to be fixed, how important it is, and how we have to prioritize this at the highest level, whether it means fixing up municipal service delivery or ensuring that we've got more certainty going forward by way of how our operations work. That's incredibly important. And as always, it's a thing of working effectively and collaboratively. Pointing fingers from business to government or government back to business is not very helpful in implementing solutions. We all need to be part of this solution, and we all need to work with a sense of absolute urgency. And also we can all do what we can in our own way. So if it means you go to retail shop and have a conscious choice or option to select a product that's either locally manufactured or imported, then we know what the right choice is to do. So Happy, that's really my input for the purposes of the conversation today. Back to you, Happy.
Thank you so much, Philippa. Thank you, really, really much appreciated. And I think, based on what you've said, and you also did not, we did not want to dwell on what has happened. We all know all of that. But the question is, how do we then move forward? And must say that, what you've shared and what the other speakers have said, it gives us a sense of comfort in the sense that we all believe that we can do something, and we can and we can get to the other side, and win in the best interest of our economy, our people, and all of that. So it's not a doom and gloom situation. It's a bit of a pause, a bit of a predicament, a big one that we can't underplay. But can we move on to a brighter side? And I think the tone of this discussion is that yes, we can. So as we do our closing remarks, I'm going to ask all the other colleagues online who are speakers to switch their cameras on, and we get in one line parting shot from a vision perspective, and the question is simply, what are you, and in no particular order, or what are you hoping for? What are you hoping to see in the next few months, given what has happened, and what is your vision? Very quickly, can we please do that? Can we go to Khomotso? May I please ask Muzi to switch on your camera? Eustace, I think Dr. Nkuna has had to jump off. If we could do that as our closing remarks, and then you'll do the finale, please, Eustace, with the vote of thanks and all of that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you once again. I think my parting shot is that we should not waste this particular crisis. Definitely going forward, we do need to have a more inclusive economy. I think even when you go to most of these retailers, all the brands that you would find in there, I think they need to now start playing a more active role within the communities now, because it's these same communities that go into these retail shops to support these brands. So like I had pointed out earlier, there's a lot of young people sitting idle at home because opportunities are not there for jobs, etc. So we definitely should not waste this crisis. I actually there's an image that you guys as Proudly SA have used, where you've got the soil and the South African flag coming out there. Mm. So this is a perfect, it's fertile ground ultimately for all of us, civil society, government, private sector, actually, to all come together, and come up with ways in which we can just assist, and as I had pointed out earlier, coming from a perspective of a small business, I think government development finance agencies as well need to try and cut out this red tape for small businesses that already have proof of concept and are already running with their entities, you know what I mean? Because ultimately, like I said earlier, we are the perfect guys for job creation, I mean, our industry doesn't necessarily require skilled labor. We're quick to even scale up businesses. So we do need assistance from government, but not only them, as I said, even the private sector. I guess the government right now is dealing with a host of issues. But I think, parting is that we should not waste this crisis.
Thank you so much, Khomotso. Well said, much appreciated. Muzi?
Yeah, look, I echo the same sentiments with Khomotso in respect of not wasting this crisis, as ironic as it sounds, because again, we don't necessarily always see things like this happening. But I think my parting shot would be that, but planning is always something that we can do prior to the effect, because I believe that if private sector, together with government and entities like ourselves who are in the middle, and yourselves, and other organizations that are grouped organizations that have an interest of the various markets that we're looking after, we need to form some sort of a public-private partnership type of a mechanism that is actually structured, first of all, and that is formal, second of all, that actually can preempt some of what the damages could actually happen. And this is not only related to unrest, I would like to believe, because disasters like this, I think there are always flags. So having mechanisms, first of all, that look at the flagging so that we anticipate things like this as they're going to happen. And we have preemptive mechanisms that we can, and we have a recovery plan as well. And this whole thing of public-private partnership is really key, because right now, as you can see, government and private sector working together, even putting plans together to try and recover. The markets that will survive quite easily are the ones that are already established, have a structured, integrated risk management approach in managing disasters like this. But the small to medium enterprises component, that's where we have the biggest work to do, as well as even the more vulnerable members. Safety net for the vulnerable members, as well as for the small to medium enterprises. I think we have a lot of work to do as private sector and government to put structures in place. The structures themselves and funding that flows into that afterwards is obviously what we can do, and it's really cheap to do that. It's really not costly, whereas the after effect is actually really what is really costly. So those would be my parting shots. I'm happy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Muzi. Please stay online, Philippa, before we go to Eustace quickly. Thank you.
We need to work collaboratively with a sense of urgency and a sense of purpose to grow this economy, because a growing economy creates opportunities for new businesses and for new jobs. And the manufacturing sector can play an important role in this. Thanks, Happy.
Thank you so much, Philippa. Well received. Thank you. Okay, so this is by, in the broadcasting world, they say it's a wrap. Thank you so much, everybody. But now I'm going to give this opportunity to Eustace for his parting shot and to do the closing remarks and thank yous. And right after Eustace speaks, may I just ask the team as we log off to play our Rebuild campaign that is currently running on SABC. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Happy. Firstly, thank you to all our speakers. Dr. Mike Nkuna, in his absence, we appreciate the input he has made, giving us a sense as to what has happened on the ground. And I think when I spoke earlier on, one of the things that I touched on was the fact that we have received, and I demonstrated through examples, we have received official communication from some of our members, entities who have been badly hit through a tragedy that we have encountered as an as a country, but where they demonstrate the commitment that they're making to the country, that they're going to come back, they are going to reinvest, they're going to forge ahead with their plans, and that is what this Rebuild webinar and the campaign that we're putting out there is about. So we are happy to hear that plans are afoot, and he's even gone to Jabulani Mall to start working on those plans to rebuild so that we can save the jobs, save the much needed jobs that have been created through the shopping malls that he had, but also through opportunities that are going to arise as a result of that rebuilding campaign. New job opportunities will come up. So very excited about that. To Komozo Motshekga, our friend, friend of the campaign, thank you for your time today. We do miss your pizza that I used to wait to enjoy at the Delicious Festival. We hope the festival will come back. We hope there will be other platforms that as a member of Quality South Africa you can benefit from. That is what we are about. It's about creating those platforms that as a member of Quality South Africa you can benefit from. So sterk them, bro. Hang in there during this time. I'm glad that the damage was not extensive to your business, that you were able to save your business and you're able to operate. Like you said, You don't even need skilled people to come into your business. They can quickly get into the system. You can even scale easily. And so your success is the success of many in the townships and the communities that you serve. So thank you for your contribution today. Muzi Lala, our brother, we looked for you. We looked for Sasria. Sasria is, like Happy said, is at the heart of every single conversation. People want to know that as we ask them to reset, to renew, and to rebuild, how will they do that when they've lost everything? A lot of people have lost pretty much everything. So we are happy to see that Sasria is doing what it's meant to do, but over and above that, that you're committing to work with Treasury. I listened to the press conference of Minister Mboweni yesterday, and I'm happy that that commitment that he has made is now backed up by you. You have systems and processes in place to help them quickly process all of those claims. So thank you for that commitment. I think that message should be sent back to your organization, that we applaud you. That is the kind of rebuilding strategy that the country requires, where we all come together. There's a social cohesion that has gotten us to this point, and we're excited that Sasria is taking up its responsibility. Philippa, our friend, thank you. At short notice, again, you have agreed to grace us with your presence, deliver. As always, we really appreciate the friendship. In fact, there's an email between me and you today where I'm saying to someone, no, they want to meet you. And I say, no, she's a good friend. And you are a good friend. As I was typing the email, you're about to come on. So thank you very much for the contribution you have made. I think that's the one thing that we needed to demonstrate through this session is the value chains, is the impact on the value chains that are part of this manufacturing industry, but also the retailers depend on manufacturing. So it extends beyond just the value chains that you've touched on. It also goes to those who have really been badly hit through a lot of the civil unrest activities that took place. And to our program director, Makuma, thank you very much for your time, for putting this together with your team. This was very important, a very important dialogue. And I'm glad we were able to have this conversation now when a lot of the people needed the kind of information that we imparted today. That's why the steering, there's always a steering. For me, the steering was not Dr. Nkuna, but the steering was Muzi, who was coming with the information that people are looking for. We know now where to send them to. So like people would say, we know where to find you. We are going to send people your way so that you can help them. And as we've sent out a survey as part of South African, as I conclude, a survey where we've asked members to give us a sense of the extent of the damage that they've incurred. And as we receive those responses, we might be reaching out to you, my brother, to say these are the companies that need a helping hand. Do they qualify? If they don't qualify, what is it that they need to do to ensure that they can qualify and benefit from those programs? So thank you very much to everyone that logged in, our delegates, those of you who are on this platform who had registered, those of you who chose to watch the session as it is streamed live on our various social media platforms on Facebook, on YouTube. Thank you. I appreciate your contributions. We appreciate the questions we have received. We have tried to respond to a lot of those on the platform itself. But if you still have questions, reach out to us, info@proudlysa.co.za. We'll definitely come back to you. That's my parting shot, and I thank all of you. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Please may we have the video as we close off. Thank you.